What's up, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. Behind us we have our Lexus GS-F, and we're going to be doing some intake modifications today. Alright guys, so this is a follow-up video to the exhaust that we just installed. Exhaust and intake go hand in hand, and we're going to go ahead and do some modifications to this intake system today. Now, I went ahead and I reached out to the guys at RR Racing. They know this platform inside out and backwards, so they were my go-to guys here to talk to. And I picked their brain a little bit on intake systems because, like I said, I wanted to do an intake. And they basically informed me that Toyota and Lexus did such a good job designing the intake system on this car. This has a dual stage intake, so under 3,500 RPMs, this flap is actually closed. As soon as you hit that RPM, the flap opens up. Now the problem with that flap opening up is it's sucking hot air in from the engine bay. So they have devised a device, it's basically a heat shield to combat that issue. We're going to be installing that. And we are also going to be installing their carbon fiber intake tube. Now the cool thing about their carbon fiber intake tube is it goes ahead and deletes these two crankcase vents. Now ordinarily I would think that's great, that's awesome, but there's one problem with that, and they tell me that it's a non-issue. But this engine is equipped with a mass airflow sensor. It is not speed density, it uses mass air. And by venting them to atmosphere, you're basically, in essence, you're sort of letting unmetered air into the engine, and it can cause lean codes and things like that. So we're just gonna install it. And I have a scan tool. I'm gonna monitor fuel trims, and I'm not gonna post this video until after I monitor the fuel trims and I trust it, because I'm not gonna recommend something to you guys that I wouldn't run on my own car. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna do the install video today. I'm gonna finish the video like I would as if I was doing any normal video. I'm just not gonna post it until after I put a couple hundred miles on the car. So let's go ahead, open the box, and see what we got here. One thing I do want to add, I already did add a high flow AFE air filter here to this car. So if I open this up, you'll see it in here. We'll do that later when we pull the intake tube off. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck, but I did already install a high flow filter, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing that I personally have to do here is remove the strut tower brace that we literally just installed, because with it in place, I can't get under here to access the things that we need to access. In order to install the intake tube, we have to go ahead and remove the fuel injector drivers that sit on top of each individual intake manifold. And this is in the way, and to get this off, I need to get the strut tower brace off. So we're gonna remove our 6 14mm strut bolts, lift this up. Strut tower brace is off. We're gonna go ahead and pull this engine cover straight up. Okay. The next thing we're gonna do is disconnect these two breathers here from our intake. Go ahead and pull the spring up. Both of these, the spring clamps, and then twist and pull. Get a pair of pliers. Like so. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get a 10mm ratcheting wrench, and I'm going to take this clamp off and my throttle body clamp off, and we're going to go ahead and get this intake tube out of our way. We're going to go ahead, undo this, get this nice and loose enough. All right, and we're going to go ahead and do this one here on the throttle body. Once it's loose enough, you should just be able to wiggle out like that. And there you go. Factory intake elbow is out of the picture. All right, guys, so what we have here is our very, very nice RR Racing carbon fiber intake elbow. And we're going to go ahead and slide this into place. Let's go airbox first, and then throttle body. All right, now that we got our intake elbow on, we're gonna go ahead and tighten these hose clamps up. I'll let you know exactly what size they are in just a minute. I can already tell they are not a 10. Let's try an 11. Nope. 12, third time's a charm. Yes, 12 millimeter. So let's go ahead and tighten these down. All right guys, so you'll see here our intake tube is installed. One thing I do like about this setup is that it retains the factory mass airflow housing. Usually the manufacturer does it best. So the MAF housing stays the same size, and basically from here over remains unchanged. So now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna remove this passenger side injector driver. I'm gonna try to just leave it plugged in, but just remove the 1, 2, and 3 10 millimeter bolts that hold it in, and just kind of flop it over. That way we can go ahead and remove this breather on the passenger side. Then we're gonna do the same thing over on the driver's side. All right guys, so what you're gonna see here is we have this injector driver here, just folded up. Like I said, we left the connectors connected just so we didn't have to mess with them. And you'll see that our first breather is right over here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that and get this hose out of the way. And we're gonna repeat this same process on the driver's side cylinder head. And then we're going to route our new breather setup. You'll see here's our second injector driver. It is also folded up and out of the way. We're gonna go ahead and remove the driver's side breather. All right, and then you're just going to more or less fish it out, set it aside. All right, so this is the breather that they supply you with. There's gonna be a short run of hose and a longer run of hose. And the short run is going to go on the passenger side. The longer run is going to go on the driver's side. So we're just gonna go ahead off camera really quick, fish this into place, and we're going to mount our breather. All right guys, so I very quickly just want to show you what I did here. I put a little rubber sheathing over the wire here, or the hose here, because I didn't like the bend it was making. But you'll see our breather is right back here. We zip tied it to a wire harness and a vacuum hose back here. And then if you follow our other breather line here, it comes down, around, and into the valve cover here. So this is completely done. We can go ahead, put our injector drivers back into place, tighten them up, put our engine cover back on, and put our strut tower brace back on. All right guys, so we have our RR Racing intake tube in. You'll see our breather back there, back behind the intake manifold. We got the cover back on, we got our injector drivers back in, and we're all good. So now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna move over to the airbox area, and we're going to start mapping out how we're going to install the heat shield. So this is our carbon fiber heat shield. Ours actually came with a little bit of damage on it, but RR Racing has told me they are going to send me a new one. So what you're going to get is this heat shield here. You're going to get some vacuum tube, and you're going to get a 10 millimeter bolt. And we have to do a couple of things here. Let me just go ahead and tilt you down a little bit more so you can see what we're working with here. What we need to do is two things. Number one, you have a horn right here. This is your security alarm, basically, the security horn. We need to relocate that up here onto the strut tower. And then we also need to relocate this vacuum solenoid that allows this air flap to open and close. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put my strut tower brace back in now that I'm done messing around with the engine cover. That way we know that when we relocate these things, we're not moving them in the way of the strut tower brace. So let me go ahead, put that back on, and then we're gonna switch gears. All right guys, so with this horn here, you have two options. Number one, you can just delete it. The only thing this is used for is when you hit your panic button or if your car alarm goes off. It sounds along with the actual horn that, you know, beeps when you honk the horn. So it's just an additional horn that is only going to be used when you use your panic button or the car alarm goes off. So like I said, you can just delete it, tape this connector up somewhere and hide it, or you can relocate it to this hole, and that is what RR Racing will have you do. Now, in order to do that, you are going to need to put a jack up under your car, jack it up, and then you have to basically remove this horn here from its bracket and bolt it here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to try to relocate it and see how it works. And then we're going to move on to this guy here. This needs to be relocated to up here. And then we have to do some switching here with the vacuum hoses in order to make this work correctly. So let's go ahead, let's relocate the horn, and then we'll move over to the solenoid. Alright guys, as you'll see here, our horn is relocated right here on the strut tower. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to remove this 10mm nut here that holds this vacuum solenoid onto the airbox, and we are going to move that up here. Now this little hose here is going to be discarded. We are not going to need that. Just be very careful when you're taking these hoses off not to break the nipples. So we're going to go ahead and remove this hose, and then we're going to move this hose over to here and then follow it down and unplug it at the bottom of the airbox. And we are going to plug a new hose into the bottom of the airbox. You'll see it right down here. There's two nipples. It's going to be the one closest to the fender. So that's basically going to be plugged into this side. We're going to use that hose to go to this valve, and we're going to run our new hose from down here to there. So let's go ahead, do the swap. I'll show you where we're at. Alright guys, and this should be your finished product. You'll see here our old hose goes to this valve, and then we ran our new hose right here along the fender and down to the airbox. So the plumbing of this guy is now complete. And we can go ahead and start setting up the heat shield. Now it is going to be necessary to trim this fender liner here. So you are kind of making a permanent modification to the vehicle. If you ever were to take this out, you'd probably have to replace that. So this isn't for the faint of heart. If you don't want to make any permanent modifications, this might not be for you, but we're going to go ahead and do it. Alright guys, and this should be your finished product here. What you'll see here is this was a lot of trial and error, but they basically want you to trim this in such a way that it will still help support the heat shield. So here's all of my trimmings. And we just used a razor blade. A nice sharp blade will cut right through this stuff. It's pretty soft. But you'll see there, that's going to be our final product. So in this video, we went ahead, we installed our intake elbow, we installed our crankcase breather, and then we installed our heat shield. And what this heat shield is going to do is ensure that we get nice cool air from outside the engine bay. It's now going to be pulling most of its air from the outside of the fender, so the fender well. So we should be getting some nice cool air in from that. So I'm going to do some data logging in the next couple of days. I'm going to make sure that I'm happy with what I see, and I'm happy with all of my trims and my intake air temps. And if I like what I see, I'm going to go ahead and post it. So please like, share, and subscribe. Like I told you earlier, I wouldn't recommend something to you guys if I would not use it on my own car. So we're going to do some testing, make sure we're happy. And if this video makes it online, then I guess we're happy. So like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.